Thanks, Brian. Great to be here. Yet another year to brief you on how ROS Industrial is doing. So, first of all, lots of people still ask why ROS Industrial. We have ROS, isn't that enough? Well, ROS is doing a great job for roboticists, but many people and many organizations around the world don't know about it, especially when you work in these environments, which are still largely dominated by PLCs and Windows boxes to a big extent, right? So our first goal is outreach. Tell them, hey, there is this great open source software stack that you can use to improve the situation for your robotics and automation tasks, right? And after we do the outreach, there's still need for further actions, from technical development to training, provide them with information that are maybe non-technical, but still essential to run a business out of open source, such as legal information, and to develop application pilots. So ROS Industrial is an initiative which has a big part as free and open, like ROS, the ROSI community. We have community meetings online. We have our own GitHub organization. And again, the tools and instruments and community dynamics that you're probably largely used to, thanks to ROS, work largely the same way. But then we also have free regional consortia that provide managerial and financial backing to actually help us with those activities that I mentioned a slide ago. I think it's important that the initiative is stewarded by no-profit applied research institutions, since we position this framework as a vendor-neutral, hardware-independent framework. So it's also nice that although we seek active participation from entities with a commercial interest, we drive it, so to speak, we steward it from this kind of entities. And I would like to thank with this our more than 50 members worldwide, and among them you could see end users of automation, from heavy manufacturing to other sort of applications, to OEMs and providers of robotics and automation hardware, to technology providers, so system integrators, also other applied research institutes, universities, which see this as a way to package their competences in components that can be put to use in the aforementioned scenarios. Now, I'll give you just a sneak peek at some highlights from the activities that are going on in Europe, to then pass it on to my colleagues. So we are happy to report that we had a big chunk of public money from the EU Commission for a project called ROSIN, which is coordinated by the Delft University of Technology. So in a nutshell, we're trying to improve ROS and ROSI in three aspects. Make it better in terms of software quality. Actually, my colleague from the IT University of Copenhagen, Adam Alami, gave a talk yesterday and has a poster. You're welcome to reach out to him in terms of how we're planning on doing it. Then you have a part that might be of interest to all of you who are associated with a legal entity with a seat in the EU, which is a public support for FTPs. And then we are also improving our activities in education in terms of making them more accessible, also for industry professionals who do not necessarily have an academic or Linux background, if you wish, and to, again, have them more geographically distributed as well throughout Europe. Again, rosin-project.eu to figure out how you can get support for your FTP. And for those of you who are a bit afraid of all the reporting that is typically necessary for EU projects, we are taking most of the pain on your behalf, so there's a very easy lump sum cost calculation. So again, it's easy to apply, please do. Another thing that I'm very happy to report on is that we're pushing also in terms of end users in manufacturing in Europe as well. We worked this summer with the R&D department of Airbus, which has been developing for quite some time ROS tools for mobile manipulation, human-robot collaboration. Actually, that's a pilot that they have and screwing the floor of an A350 airplane, and that is now moving from their R&D to their manufacturing sites. And interestingly, they see ROS as the vendor-neutral transfer medium with which to transfer the results, and actually they're actively on the outlook for ROS-capable system integrators. So I truly think that this is what will ultimately drive OEMs into providing ROS-native hardware, right? Since it's the users who typically drive the market. Before passing on, save the date, we have the annual ROSI conference in Germany, Stuttgart, as usual. Will be December 12th to 14th. There are some highlight speakers. The program registration link, as last year, will be available after ROSCon and IROS, since I typically fish some interesting speakers at those events as well. So you're welcome to hit refresh on rosindustrial.org, and on October 5th, registration link and program. Thanks. And now on to Matt Robinson from Southwest Research Institute.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Hello, my name is Matt Robinson. I'm now the steward of the ROS Industrial Consortium Americas. Recently new to Southwest Research Institute, and my first ROSCon, because I previously was at Caterpillar, where I ran manufacturing automation research. And we were actively developing ROS applications for our Caterpillar factories worldwide. But I had this opportunity to move over and take over ROS Industrial Americas. And because we realize the value and the opportunity here, and we can make an impact in how we manufacture. So what's going on relative to ROS Industrial Americas on the consortium? We've had some growth. I list here kind of officially the new members. We have Magna, which is the largest tier 1 automotive manufacturer. They're actively engaged in the consortium now. We welcome them. In fact, their steward in advanced robotics was here at the conference, and many of you may have met him. And Cognix also. Mirko touched on a lot of the hardware providers engaging with the ROS Industrial and ROS Industrial Consortium, and Cognix is one because they see an appeal to make their hardware interface and be able to function within the ROS ecosystem. And that's a great example. As far as also recently, some of you may be aware of, but the newest Manufacturing Innovation Institute was recently announced. It's called the ARM Institute, Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing. That's a really exciting development, and ROS is being very well positioned to be really the de facto development framework for the new capabilities that will probably come out of this. The other interesting aspect of that is not only is that the applications are centered around manufacturing, but also then, of course, the benefit is the government matching funds. Much like our friends over in the EU, this will be a well-received injection of funding to support applications developments. As far as education, we've recently released, and they're out there available on GitHub in the ROS Industrial repo, the kinetic training. We are actually getting ready to host a new training. We've done a few classes already. Recently did one in Singapore. We also hosted a class in June with the kinetic training. It's been fairly well received, and it's out there and available. Largely on the technical front, and that's what the pictures are here on the slide, is the Focus Technical Project. We recently wrapped up Robotic Blending Milestone 4. We're very, very, very fortunate that we've been able to actually continue this through 4 milestones, and considering a 5th milestone. But largely what we're looking here is improving the sensor. Up to this point, we'd been using the Microsoft Kinect. It's a very low cost and easy to access sensor, but it had its limitations. So we had the benefit of leveraging the Insenso N35 and integrating that tool for the capability development. With that, we are also able to do improved segmentation. So that being, we were able to actually then create meshes of perceived parts and generate trajectories based on that, and that include curved surfaces, where before we were just doing planes. Obviously, then the next step was to incorporate some quality assurance, because this is a manufacturing, we're making parts. The intent was that, hey, they're good. So we integrated quality assurance. Then finally, I included here where the package is at. It's a Godel, and we actually have a demonstration at our booth that is sometimes working. Many of you may have walked by and seen it, but that is available out there. We're currently doing some merging, so keep an eye on it. It'll be available. And finally, myself, the new consortium manager. Again, recently came over around Memorial Day, started up at Southwest Research Institute, and still kind of adjusting to this role, so bear with me. I did want to include this. This is kind of the official unveiling of the robotic blending milestone video, and it just highlights some of the capabilities. We recently did the development, or this technology demonstration, at Wolf Robotics. They're based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. The interesting thing about why we chose Wolf Robotics, one, is that they do a lot of advanced development for heavy manufacturing, as far as like at least advanced in the context of what you see in factories. And it's also relevant to a lot of the customer membership base, a company they work with. We've been really trying to engage this idea of the integrator being engaged in ROS Industrial because it's a rapid pathway, or an easily and accessible pathway to get advanced robotics capability in factory floors, which is meaningful to a lot of companies that don't really have, a development bench in-house. That was even a challenge at Caterpillar, right? Beyond like our corporate research group, at the plants, at these factory sites where we want to deploy and leverage this capability, they don't have the bandwidth to kind of develop these applications from scratch. So having, if you will, a one throat to choke that's actually going to deploy this solution and actually maintain it in these factories is very meaningful to our end users. So here, we're processing these parts, integrated QA, leveraging the segmentation to basically, again, further the efficiency of the production as well as improved worker safety and allowing those workers to focus on more value-added activities. This is just an example of the integrated quality assurance. What's interesting here when we do the quality assurance, right, we're actually getting really detailed characterization of the part that remains to be cleaned up. And that's meaningful here because then we can leverage processing IP. Again, one of our consortium members, 3M, has a lot of experience in abrasives. And so we're able to generate more optimized path plans to then process and treat these materials. I'll go ahead and advance after we kind of see the output of the quality assurance. This full video will be available up here on YouTube. You can find it via rosindustrial.org. There we go. So finally, again, I touched on this, the value of the integrator, right? So these integrators typically stitch together a bunch of hardware and deploy these solutions and support them in factories. And I can't highlight the importance to at least our end users on that support piece. Because I know a number of us at Southwest, or when I was at Caterpillar in corporate research, I'm not the one who's going to answer the phone at 3 a.m. when it breaks, right? So it's really convenient to have that deployment vehicle so we can start realizing the value sooner, right, along the way. And it facilitates a stepping stone to realize the greater objectives that we all talk about as far as a future state. Then lastly, I just want to touch on a few upcoming events. We're hosting a training at Caterpillar. Caterpillar is so excited with the progress we've made, both in the manufacturing research space and product automation space. They're actually hosting a training event that'll also have an advanced track option. You can find more information about that on the events tab at rosindustrial.org. We're also hoping down in San Antonio, we're hosting a little group. We're going to set aside some space and participate in the World Move It Day. So we encourage, obviously, everyone to support and get involved with World Move It Day on October 18th. First membership meeting for the ARM Institute, November 1st to 3rd. So you'll probably start hearing some things coming out from that. And then finally, our annual meeting, not too much after the EU's, it's going to be slated late February. More information will be coming to that as we firm up the date. But we usually are in that kind of late February, early March time frame. So with that being said, I'll pass over to my colleague Min Ling from ROS Industrial Asia Pacific. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Matt. So I'm going to try to do this in about 5 minutes. Okay, so ROS Industrial AP, where we are so far. We began our journey 1 year ago. Now in year 2, our main objective is to use ROS Industrial for industrial use. Increased robotic talent in ensuring ROS is key enabler for students, professionals, and industries in Asia Pacific. So we've done workshops, we've done training, we are doing ROS industrial awareness in the region, as well as doing an FTP, which I will explain a bit later about PACML. So just a picture of our activities. We had a workshop in Singapore in May earlier this year. There was about 80 participants. We also invited NASA to come and join and also present information about how they use ROS in Johnson Space Center. And also we had a demonstration and workshop and presentations. So PACML, this is a FTP, a collaboration between 3M, AITC, SUI, and +1 Robotics. So what we were doing here is trying to understand software development and create software to use PACML, which is a packaging machine language, to using OPC UA to connect to a PLC using ROS. So there's 2 different methods of doing this. You can have ROS as the master or the PLC as the master, and I'll explain a bit about that later. So what we did was we tested it with a remote PLC and then see if that works. But we also had C++ libraries and also it in Python using Smash. We also integrated an RViz plugin for PACML, showing the PACML state machine as a simplistic manner, and then also provided options for mode selections in the PLC, as well as a cumulative state of each of the states as you go through the PLC state machine. So quickly, on the far left-hand corner, ROS Industrial, Robot, and also then you have PLC. So this is where we are, or where we were before. Now where we are is we've connected ROS to communicate with the PLCs, and we can communicate with various vendors as long as they have OPC UA connectivity. So our main aim is to be able to use ROS as the master to communicate with different machines and different PLCs. So here, PLC is sending the master signals to ROS, but what this video is showing is the ROS is the master, which is very interesting because it sends signals and messages to the PLC, and then the PLC sends messages to Kuka. So we're really using, in this case, ROS as a middleware. And this is also available at GitHub, so feel free to download, feel free to contribute, feel free to play around with the PackML state machine. So going back to what we are and what we're trying to do for Asia-Pacific region, we're trying to accelerate robotic adoption, investment in Asia-Pacific, but also support ROS Industrial driver development in this region. What we are looking into is certification for hardware compatibility with ROS 2, and that's something that we'll look forward to in the next couple of years as well. We've got hardware interfaces, software development, education and training, and of course a lot of community events and networking events. So come and visit us at the booth. So we're out there in room 220, and here's the contact information. And yes, I've done it in time.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for what's happening within the world of ROS Industrial? Yes, House Wright.
Which PLC models were you integrating with UA?
At the moment, we're using Siemens and Beckhoff, but we're looking at AB, but that's going to be tricky because of where AB is at with OPC UA.
Do you know what's the longest running installation of ROS Industrial in a production environment?
That's a good question, Brian. I don't know, but I guess these guys can tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe. Which one?
We have one in January 2015, AGVs. I don't know if you have one.
Yeah, January 2015, he mentioned some AGVs. We currently have a deployment for Scan and Plan, which is basically that framework I showed for the blending. It's been running at Spirit Aerosystems, doing high mix painting for probably about 3 years now.
All right. If there are no other questions, then we'll thank the speakers again.